I talk about the moon often. I believe I have several videos about the moon. And I'm never going to stop talking about topics where I feel like there's more to dive into or new angle to approach. And so this video was really going to be about the moon and how you process pain, difficult feelings, maybe even the counterproductive ways in which our moon signs sometimes deal with very hurtful things in ways that don't really nurture us, right? The moon is here to nurture, but it's here to protect. And sometimes we may do things that aren't in our best interest, or we may avoid certain feelings, certain situations because we are trying to protect ourselves, right? So I'm going to jump into that, talk about these moon signs. So this moon in Aries issue is externalizing, okay? And so that means moon in Aries is very defensive. When attacked personally, it can take things personal, can be, even if you look at a jovial person, cool person, good, easy to get along with, but when they feel attacked personally, or they feel that something that is about them is being, put in jeopardy, they can get very defensive. And so, but the moon in Aries, way of dealing with burden and pain and things like that can be, I need to move, I need to get up, I need to get away from this. This is too much. That's fine, right? Sometimes we do have to get away from people and situations that are not productive, but it can be an issue if you externalize too much. That moon in Aries need to, yes, I'm going to work it away. I'm going to work it off. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go here. I'm going to get myself moving. That's great. But again, this is not an energy that deals well with what is happening inside, because even though the moon, right, like the moon, it's internal, but it's in Aries. And I would say of all the signs, the moon in Aries is the most restless. It is the most, jittery. It has to get up, it has to move. I've seen this in moon and Aries people a lot. They can't sit still. And so sometimes when there's difficult feelings, it can be even more, it can be harder to really sit still and deal with that. And so I'm not saying the coping mechanism of moon and Aries is bad. I'm saying when you refuse to acknowledge the things that are going on with you and you're like, okay, I'm just going to externalize everything, that can be the issue. Now the moon in Taurus seeks comfort in what's familiar, even if it's not good for them. So it could be returning back to old habits that you feel are safe. So the way in which we sometimes view safety isn't literally safety. Sometimes things feel safe because they're familiar. I know how to operate there. I know how to handle that. I know how to handle that person. People going back into relationships they don't need to be in, but it's like, I know, right? It's, you go for what is the known rather than the unknown, even if the known is not good for you. So the moon in Taurus sometimes can deal with difficult feelings. Again, this is not to say that, yes, moon in Taurus is exalted, but that does not mean every single moon in Taurus person has this perfect way of dealing with their emotions, right? It is more symbolic of what that moon in Taurus energy represents. So we'd have to look at the conditions of the chart, the aspects of the moon, all the other things, of course. But that moon in Taurus energy, sometimes it's going back to bad habits. It is because that's safe. I'm going back, I'm retreating. I'm not moving forward because I'm so stuck in this feeling. Now, Gemini can sometimes rationalize painful experiences, trying to, may not always sit with one emotion, and so sometimes with Moon and Gemini, like when you don't sit with one emotion, you sometimes don't target the issue because, well, it was this, and then it was this, and then the problem was this, and then it was that. And a Moon and Gemini may like to actually discuss their problems a little bit more than some other people, but that doesn't mean they're always going to take action. You would have to see what else is going on in that chart. But sometimes the Moon and Gemini, that's their issue, is seeking clarity and asking questions or wanting to really understand like how they're feeling, but a hard time sometimes like zooming in on that specific feeling of what's actually going on, as opposed to trying to then address all these other things that may come up, which means you actually distract yourself from really dealing with the issue at hand. The moon in Cancer, sometimes the way in which moon in Cancer can sabotage or that process in a way that is productive. Now that, again, we know the moon rules over Cancer. I do think that moon in Cancer energy, I would say in general, has a great way of understanding what their feelings are. Even if they don't tell you, even if they can't put it into words, the moon in Cancer has an instantaneous understanding of what their needs are in that moment. But the sabotage piece can sometimes be when the moon in Cancer has an experience that is hurtful, painful, and then it reminds them of all the other past hurts that they've had. And instead of addressing that issue, or instead of dealing with what they're feeling, and realizing sometimes the moon in Cancer is dealing with residual energy, and it can be very hard for the moon in Cancer to move on from a situation, to actually ascertain more information about themselves and what's going on, say, actually, maybe, you know what, this situation is a little bit different. It is Cancer is so connected to past and memory and things that have already happened that sometimes the moon in Cancer can do that, where there's this instant recognition. I felt this feeling before. And then it leads to sometimes, I'll talk about Scorpio in a way too. Scorpio, it's similar, not exactly, but where Cancer knows it has to really come to realization of what is actually going on. Past situations, yes, are important, but it doesn't mean it's always going to be the same as that. Learning how to deal with situations that are in front of you instead of being so focused on what happened before, and you're not able to move on when you're stuck. Well, you know what? This reminds me of what somebody did 3 years ago to me, because it's, but really it's a different situation, right? The Leo moon, sometimes the Leo moon, is channeling a lot of different ways to feel validated. And so when the Leo moon is hurt, the Leo moon sometimes can act out. This is where you will see attention-seeking behavior, maybe seeking and wanting affection, okay? And that can be, it could be as simple as like maybe someone just, needs someone to be there for them. But it can lead to just some like, people acting out, doing things out of character in order to gain that attention. Moon is different than the sun, of course, when we're talking about the moon versus the sun in that regard. But that Leo moon is like, again, when positively aspected, when the moon and Leo is good, they're good. There is a great sense of joy, of genuine excitement about the ways in which they receive affection and the way in which they give it as well. Virgo, when Virgo is feeling pain or is unsure or sabotaging, it can be a stressor. Like, and they don't know what it's very interesting. I see this more with Virgo moons than Virgo suns. It's like this accusation or this comment around like, I don't know what to do. Which you would think a Virgo does, but again, this is the moon. So like this is now we're not dealing with the external, right? Even though Virgo can be that, right? And so the Virgo is overwhelmed. And so sometimes they keep processing it to filter until they get to the right feeling. I have to get to the right answer. I have to get to the right answer. And if moon doesn't like the answer they get, sometimes they have a hard time accepting certain things. Like, actually, Virgo moon, you're wrong. Actually, Virgo moon, you thought that was the problem, but that's not the problem. So with the Virgo moon, it's like, benefits mostly from calming down, because it can get people with this can be very overwhelmed to the place where they don't know how to handle a problem or situation, and they don't move on until they figure out, like, I have to get to the root of why I feel the way that I feel, instead of just feeling the way that you feel. Moon and Virgo can struggle with feel the way you feel. You don't need to have an answer right now or all the time. The Libra moon. Okay, the Libra moon, sometimes we're dealing with pain, people dealing with pain and feelings that they don't want to feel. Sometimes you can see Libra moons commiserate with other people, or they're trying to find other people to commiserate with them, or side with their feelings, side with what happened. I need someone to agree with me that I should feel this way, as opposed to Libra moon learning how to have those coping mechanisms to feel the way that you feel. Also learning how sometimes you don't need to find someone else who's going to agree with you. You don't, learning how to balance the way in which you respond versus the way in which you are approaching a situation to get some type of, someone on your side, someone to say, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's that they shouldn't have done that. So like, learning how to lean into, yes, there can be positive ways in which you engage with people to, yeah, it feels good to feel validated. But sometimes with Libra moons, the ones who sabotage, it is this inability to accept difficult feelings. And so there can be not really being as internal, processing as much internally as they should, with this desire to seek a union with someone else. And sometimes it can mean avoiding a difficult situation they have going on, or it can mean finding someone to kind of commiserate. Yeah, I don't like them either. Yeah, they shouldn't have done that to you. Again, this is the extreme side of it. I'm not saying everybody's like that. The Scorpio moon internalizes, makes decisions, and says never again. Like Scorpio moon, because sometimes it is a short threshold, is a very limited threshold. And so, and of course we know the moon is in fall in Scorpio. And so there can be situations where instead of, this is a nuanced situation. You know what? I don't like what happened. I'm going to deal with it. It can literally be, I'm never going to talk to them again. I'm never going to do that again. I'm never, ever going to help anyone else out. I'm never, ever going to do this. I'm never going to do that. And sometimes it's great to have those boundaries, but you can go to the extreme sometimes if you are just locking away any potential for you to, be there for people, or locking away any potential to be supportive because you've been hurt before. The Sagittarius moon feels a need to it's an outward energy as well, meaning it's externalized. So there sometimes can be Sagittarius can kind of mull over, why did this happen? really trying to understand like things through the truth lens. But sometimes the moon in Sag can externalize and, oh, you're right, I'm wrong, or they're completely wrong. Like, and so because the moon in Sag doesn't like to feel negative, it likes to feel positive. And so sometimes it's hard for, now moon in Sag can take accountability more than moon in Aquarius. I'm gonna get that in a second. But the moon in Sagittarius sometimes can sabotage. But I think it's also like internally learning and understanding your truth. Moon and Sag, who can do that well, you're going to learn a lot about yourself and what you really feel. But sometimes Moon and Sag can seek knowledge. I'm seeking why this happened, instead of looking deeper within yourself at your part in it, at your actions, at the way in which you played a role in it, right? So the Moon and Sag kind of has this, can have like a self-righteousness about, well, I'm right. I'm right. I'm not even going to deal with it. Yeah, I feel pain. Yeah, I feel hurt. Yeah, I feel this. But I'm right. You're wrong. And there is no buffer area at all when you're dealing with that kind of moon. There's an attachment piece of that. Moon in Capricorn sometimes can deal with pain and sabotage by being very cynical. Very, very cynical. Well, this was always going to happen. It was never going to work out. Or they can be like, I'm not built for relationships. They're just never going to work. Nobody, I can't get along with anybody, or nobody understands me. The Capricorn moon sabotages by this kind of, it's almost like a rite of passage sometimes for Capricorn moons to be a little cynical, a little, down, and it's very different than what Sag wants to operate from. Because remember, Sag is doing this more like, be like, well, no, it's there. But Capricorn is more of this, reality, but it's almost like brutally telling yourself a reality that is kind of limiting yourself. It's so, just like I said, Scorpio will limit other people and what they do for other people when they're hurt. Capricorn is more of this, well, it was never going to happen for me anyway, or that wasn't meant for me, or it can be very much this kind of like, well, the world is cold. And yes, sometimes, but if that's always your defense mechanism when things hurt you or are painful, that means you're gonna, you're not gonna grow to the level that you possibly could. The Aquarius moon does not like vulnerability, typically. Does not like vulnerability. I do think moon in Aquarius, again, there's some positive things I could say, but what I will say here is like, they're kind of like above it all. Aquarius moons do not like to admit there is pain. There's a difficulty acknowledging, like, this is how I felt. My feelings were hurt, or nope, not, and so they theorize outside of themselves sometimes. People sometimes do this, and society is so, it's like moon in Aquarius doesn't want to feel, and it's so interesting because you would think, again, rulership, right? There's no rulership over Aquarius, where moon in Aquarius struggles. But there's no reason why, because it's not detriment, it's not involved. But I do think moon in Aquarius is a sign it's very difficult, because we're dealing with the moon, which is nurture. When you're dealing with Aquarius energy, which is about this level of like individuality, of this detachment from being overly emotional, so that way you can do the logical thinking, so you can be proactive in the way in which you are proceeding, right? In that regard. But the Aquarius moon can sabotage by not fully understanding themselves individually. It's that, don't theorize everything. Well, sometimes people just do this, or this whole family, you know what I'm talking about? Like, I've seen this in Aquarius moons, a lot of Aquarius moons, and it's like this, like, it's externalizing, like Aries, but different externalizing. It's more so outside of themselves, so they don't have to feel what they need to feel to understand like how really this is affecting them. Pisces moon is like Cancer. I think all the water signs recognize when they feel something. Anyone really with water energy somewhere, water placement, I think recognizes their feelings probably more than some other signs and placements would. The Pisces moon, I think, has a better way of, Pisces recognizes their hurt. They recognize the pain and they retreat. I feel like Pisces moons, they can be overly sensitive, and they have to watch the victimhood piece of this. But I actually think Pisces moon is the most, it's like understanding, how do I say this? Suffering. And I'm not saying Pisces is built to suffer. It's almost like Pisces understands it. Whereas Capricorn, of course, which is the sign of sextile, is more like reality based, right? Well, things don't happen right. Things are like that. I should have known, right? Pisces moon retreats. They live in it. They recognize it. They might, they accept that there's pain. And if they can get themselves out of it, they can do well, because Pisces understands compassion and this universal suffering and this idea of like, this is life, right? We have to go through the motions to actually feel the positive things, right? And so for Pisces moon, I think that some of them can actually have pretty good coping mechanisms because they recognize the pain, whereas I feel like some signs don't. And I feel like Cancer and Pisces especially are really good with that. Scorpio recognizes it, but it's really just like cut, right? But I think Pisces moons live within it. They can understand it, and they can really kind of understand themselves enough to know that they are in pain, that they are dealing with something, and they kind of have to retreat. They need to go away so that they aren't, really exposing themselves to continue, especially if you're dealing with a situation where there is some level of abuse or, mistreatment or things of that nature.